Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Todd Rotundo. I'm the Ward 1 City Councilor, and I'm happy to be here with all of you tonight. Glad to see that those who are not from Ryal Side were able to make it past the broken bridge. So thank you for making it here. I do want to thank the Ryal Side Civic Association for, again, hosting another great candidate night to be able to see all of you. Please check out their website. I know they won't tout it, but I want you to know the greater things that they have done. I want to thank the Ayers custodians, Luigi and Connor, for opening it up. Kim over in BevCam for filming this again. As you know, Bridge Street's done. Looks great. I want to thank, it's on time. It's actually ahead of time. So now we have a nice speedway. So I'm sure I'll be hearing you guys about all the speeding going on. Anyways, enough of me. I just wanted to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Steve and Nathan and the board for the Ryal Side Civic Association. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Todd. My name is Nathan Seavey. I'm the president of Ryal Side Civic Association. I want to say thank you all for coming out tonight. This is one of the things that we like to do at the Civic Association. We do community events, we do advocacy, and we utilize the space for rentals and events that we have on Eleanor Avenue. I also want to give a quick word of thanks to the previous presidents, Eric Gagnon and Joe Gustafson, who was the vice president. They did a lot of work to help bring all this together, and we're glad to continue into the future. Just for those of you online, etc., the Ryal Side Civic Association is a nonprofit, community-based organization. Basically, we're all volunteers here. We're just volunteers who spend our time making the community better. It's been since 1934 that the Ryal Side Civic Association has been in effect. We do the July 4th parade, we do an Easter egg hunt, we do a Thanksgiving dinner drive and a winter gift drive. We work with the PTO, and we do the ice rink at Livingston Park, and we sponsor the porta potty in the summer. We organize a lot of events at the place as well. One-of-a-kind events like Austin Clip did a piano night there. We had a sing-along. That was great. But also, if you have any ideas of how to utilize the space or you want to get the community together, we're all ears. Please come and talk to us. If you want to start a reading group, you want to start a sports night, you want to start a knitting group, a yoga class, dance. We've got dance. People come in and dance. I also want to say, make you aware that there are some vacancies in our board. We're losing our VP this year. Our vice president is stepping down. So if that's something that interests you, you can see me or another member of the board or email the main email address online. We also are committing this year to supporting our committees. So we have committee chairs open. We've got a membership committee chair open, a program committee chair, a public relations committee, a scholarship committee, and a history committee. So if you're interested in any of those things, if you like working with the youth, maybe you can help out with the scholarships. If you're interested in the history of Ryal Side, or maybe you know a lot about it, come on down and share what you know. We're also always looking for volunteers to help with our events. So whether it's to take tickets, to run a raffle, to help set up chairs and tables, please, we always send out an email, always respond, and let us know if you'd be willing to help. I think that's everything. All right, thanks for coming out tonight, folks. We really appreciate it. I hope you find it enlightening, and I'm handing it off to our treasurer, Stephen Moffat.
Thank you. We're getting on to tonight's event. Thanks to BevCam again for streaming and recording the event. They've done the important work of recording many of the events with the candidates that have happened already in the past week, so please go watch those. Our questions tonight come from members, but are also informed by the responses that we've already heard from candidates over the past week. But to start us off with a very busy evening, we wanted to welcome our two candidates for School Committee District A. So first, I'd like to introduce Jerry Cahill to give an opening remark.
I can talk loud. Okay. Hi. Hi, I'm Jerry Cahill. On the ballot, I will appear as Geraldine Cahill. Only my dad calls me that for real, but feel free to check that name in the ballot. I'm running for District A School Committee, which is Wards 1, 2, and 3. I'm kind of new to the whole running for office thing. I ran once before and wasn't too successful with that. I think I've had a lot more experience in the community and with the whole realm of politics to make things a little bit smoother this time. I think it's time for change. I think that, it's time for Beverly to take education in a new direction. I think maybe not a new direction, maybe an old direction. I think that there's not enough transparency. People don't know what's going on in the school system right now. Even if you attend school board meetings, you're not always aware of all the sort of things that go around in the background of that. Some of those would be like various programs. I had spoken to a number of people that didn't know about various educational programs that are offered within the city, so they don't know how to access them, they don't know they exist, so their kids aren't taking advantage of those. There are also some barriers around IEPs, and I think everybody feels kind of isolated when it comes to IEPs and that they don't have enough time to, they think they're alone and they're the only kids that aren't getting serviced, when really it's a more global issue. We have excellent teachers, we have excellent facilities, and I think we need to provide our children with an excellent education. I think we're headed in the right direction, but I think it's time for a little bit of change. And I'm trying to be cognizant of time. I didn't know there was a timer going. I think tapping into some of our community resources and commercial vendors would be a good time to look into stuff like that. A little bit about me, and I'm going to make this really short. I work as a family support worker with a mental health agency. I specialize in children that have issues, and I'm trained in behavior management. I'm trained in mediation. I've presented for the last 2 years, 24 and 25, at the YAR conference, which is the Youth at Risk conference that's held here in Endicott College. I've presented on gay rights. I've presented on parents' rights. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And next, we'd also like to introduce our current Ward 1 School Committee member, Rachel Abel.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening. I know it takes a commitment to fill our very busy calendars. I want to thank also BevCam and, of course, Ryal Side Civic for making this opportunity available. I'm very thankful to be in this building right now. My kids both went to school at Ayers. It holds a very special place in my heart. In fact, when they were in first and second grade, that's when I first decided to be of service to our community, to run for Ward 1 School Committee. And I think that over the past decade, we've done some really important work together to make full-day kindergarten available to all of our students, to build our new middle school, to work together hand in hand to get through COVID, and to get our students back on track. I think there are a lot of reasons why experience will be required for the District A seat moving forward, and I would kindly ask for your vote. I think that we have a lot of work to do with policy, our graduation determinations, and our negotiations with our bargaining units. I think that a new superintendent is stepping in at a very important time. Change is definitely here. And I think with at least 4 new school committee members, it will be important to have a couple of us veterans hang on for a couple more years, because we have a lot of work to do and we don't want to miss opportunities for our kids. Our kids are only their age each grade, and every year is important. So I would like to continue to do the work that I sought out to do 10 years ago, with 2 more years in the District A position. And I thank you very much again for turning out tonight. I thank you for remembering to make a plan to vote on November 4th. I think it would be incumbent on all of us to remind our neighbors as well. Our municipal elections typically don't have the turnout, but I think it's mostly those people here in the room that get the word out to our neighbors that it's actually an election day. There's also so many early voting opportunities. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you to our school committee candidates, and now we're going to shift focus to our next contested race, councilor-at-large. We have a large field this year with 6 candidates vying for 3 seats at councilor-at-large. Due to having 6 candidates with us tonight, we will have 4 questions, with each candidate being allotted 2 minutes for a response. Our own counselor, Todd Rotondo, has generously brought the city council timer to keep us on track. So thank you once again, Todd, for making this feel like city council for all of our candidates. So we'll start with current councilor Julie Flowers. And the first question, we just want the candidates to please introduce yourselves. Let us know why you're running to be a city councilor and how you're going to use that role to better the city.
Thank you very much. And I thought that timer looked familiar, so now I discovered that it is. Thank you, as others have already said, thank you so much to the Ryal Side Civic Association for holding this forum, and thank you to all of you for attending, and thank you to BevCam, of course, for being here and keeping us streaming. It's so important to have these opportunities to talk as neighbors when we have local municipal elections, but it's really important to have these opportunities to talk as neighbors all of the time, because what we want to do in Beverly, I think, is work together as neighbors to make our community feel like a place where people can find a home, people can feel seen and valued, our schools are invested in, our infrastructure is invested in, and we continue to build the kind of community we want to see. So my name is Julie Flowers. I am one of your current at-large city councilors. At-large just means that wherever you live in the city, whatever ward, whatever neighborhood, I represent you. It is a citywide position, and so you here in the great neighborhoods of Ryal Side can vote for your at-large councilors and your neighbors all across the city as well. I am currently in my 4th term as one of your at-large councilors and my 2nd term as council president. I'm running for a 5th term to represent you, to keep working hard for you. And really the reason that I'm running is not that different from when I first ran back in 2017. And that is that I believe that it's really important for us to be able to have the kinds of city leaders who are accessible and available, there to listen and hear your stories, get to know you, hear your ideas for the city, but also the things that are troubling you, the problems and the obstacles that you see and sense, and then to use whatever tools that I might have or that we as a council have or that we together with our other elected official colleagues have in our toolbox to help solve those problems. That's what motivated me to run in the first place. It's what still motivates me today. I have met so many Beverly neighbors in the almost 8 years that I've been on the council. I have valued the time with you all, valued the work we've done, and I hope to be able to continue that and hope that you would consider using one of your 3 at-large votes on November 4th and allow me the chance to continue serving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do not want to cut anyone's applause short, especially Julie. Hi everyone. My name is Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza. Kenan is a combination of my parents' names, Ken and Ann. I often get asked how I got my name and how to say it, so I hope that helps you. Thank you so much. I am a very close neighbor on Goat Hill, and so excited to be here. I first want to say I know this part of it feels like we're leading up to the crescendo, but I want to tell you that for me, the actual engagement of my neighbors is the crescendo for me. I am so excited that what I get to do is meet new people, hear what you think, also just engage you, and also just want to really commend you for taking the time in what is now an incredibly busy calendar that many of us have to show up here. This small step actually to me is one of the most critical things we could do today. And so why am I running? So I've had the pleasure of serving on school committee for several terms. I actually joined the school committee during the pandemic. And the reason for that propels me to run for this seat today. I essentially looked to see where I could serve. And as an ambivert, to be more specific, although some days I feel like an introvert, I actually was able to overcome my nervousness about public office when I saw the challenges we had during the pandemic with what our children needed. I'm a professional educator. I've been in higher education most of my career. I train and teach teachers. I write about teaching. But one of the pieces of my work that I love the most is I do a lot of work in dialogue and facilitation. And so through that time, what I've really been able to understand is that we can talk about specific issues as we're running for office, but the demeanor we come with it and the intention we have behind our work is probably the most critical aspect of what we can offer you as a public. And what I'm offering and hoping that you will help me do by electing me on November 4th is I'm bringing a humble and listening and compassionate spirit to this work so that I can get to know all of you and ensure that I'm actually being a representative who's truly seeking to understand your needs and how we can best do it in a collaborative way. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Sonia. I'm very excited to be running for City Council at Large. Again, thanks to Ryal Side Civic Association, BevCam, which I'm a proud board member of, and all my fellow candidates up here. It's a lot to dive into this, and so I'm grateful to be sharing the stage with folks so committed to our city. My background, I come from a working class family, teenage parents. My mom raised us primarily. She would work overnight shifts as a nursing aide, get home, get us ready for school, then go work at an odd job like a fish market or something like that, just to make ends meet. And that kind of day-to-day resilience is what motivated me to get into public service at a very young age. At 15, I was working on campaigns. 17, I was at the State House. And we've been in it or around it ever since. And I think what compelled me this time to actually put my name on the ballot was a desire to see more proactive leadership. So we're hearing a lot about folks who want to reach the community. That's how we've been conducting our campaign. We've knocked over 8,000 doors as part of this campaign to demonstrate, that commitment to meeting you where you are. If I'm lucky enough to be elected into office, right? So we've also launched something called the Sonia Survey, which has yielded sort of dozens of results that let me know what you folks consider the top 2 or 3 issues. That way, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, we can kind of hit the ground running in January. So we've taken that kind of proactive step, and I think what I'd like to do is take it one step further if elected. One of the key things I'd love to accomplish is to formalize our community engagement standards here in Beverly so that you know when a shovel goes in the ground, how long it's going to be there for, why it's there, and what you are going to get out of that process, and if your feedback has been built into that sort of engagement piece. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing, and look forward to working with you all to accomplish it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. My name is John Milady. Like a lot of middle-aged people, you get into certain aspects of a fad or a hobby. Weighted vest walking for me was also genealogy. And fun fact about my last name, it's originally pronounced in Ireland as Melody, and it means bald and ugly. So you can imagine what my ancestors must have looked like. Maybe they were driven out of Ireland like the snakes. I first got into public service when we moved here in Beverly in 2010. I wanted to give back to my community. I wanted to give back to a place that I called home. So I ran for city council. You could fit more people in a diner booth than voted for me in that election. But following that defeat, I had a nice meeting with then Mayor Scanlon, who talked about how do you want to get involved. So I served on the planning board. I served on the board of trustees for Historic Beverly. And then for 6 years, I worked on the school committee representing Ward 4, but really representing the entire city. I think I have this unique perspective as a public school teacher to bring a different point of view to the city council, somebody who knows firsthand the experiences and the consequences of budget cuts. I spent numerous times negotiating with their different unions, meeting with constituents, whether it be volunteering on the planning board or talking to people during the COVID lockdown. I'm very proud to say I answered every single phone call and every single email. And the biggest takeaway from my experiences on the school committee as well as the planning board is that everybody has a right to be heard. Everybody deserves to have their voices heard. So please consider me to be one of your 3 votes. I'd love to have the opportunity to represent my friends and my family. And the main reason why I'm serving is I absolutely love it here and I want to give back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kyle Ritalik. Thank you, BevCam, Civic Association. Thank you all for coming. I love Beverly. I was born and raised here. I went to Ayers Ryal Side. My mom was a teacher in the school systems for over 20 years, taught at Hannah up until COVID and then retired. My kids go to Ayers. We went through the strike. We went through everything with everyone. And I think I have a very unique perspective on this city, being born and raised here and seeing what it used to be and what it's come to now. I'm a blue collar worker. I did something similar to Keith's mom. I work all night. I drive for Lyft and Uber. I'm going to leave here tonight and go work until 2 in the morning, and then I'm going to wake up at 6 and get my kids ready for school. And I love that, and I love that I can live in this city. And I think that's another reason, like all these guys, want to give back to the city. I joined a commission, and shortly after, I was appointed chair of that commission, and I really enjoy that work. And I kind of got a backstage look at everything, a behind-the-scenes look at how budgets really work, and the real timeline on how things get done. And working with the city, working with the mayor, working with an incredible grant writer, and I mean, there's just an amazing group of people that run this city, and you really have to fall on those people too. When something comes up, you can't be afraid to reach out to a department that you want to work with or get something done. You got to go right to that department head and talk with those people. And I really love doing that, and I love meeting new people, and I meet hundreds of new people every night, and a lot of Beverly residents, Danvers, the whole community, and I get a very different perspective of what they think about the community and what they would like to get changed. And so it's been a lot of fun, and I really love doing this very much, and I can't wait to get into city council and really help push things forward and get some great grants for some awesome programs and the McPherson Youth Center. I mean, there's just endless things here in Beverly that I really want to help push forward. Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Ryal Side Civic Association, BevCam, same thing, everybody that showed up. Shows you have interest in voting. I lived on Ashton Street, was about 5 or 6 years old. Went to Ryal Side, and this is where a lot of my character came from, was Ryal Side. Aubert Park, it was amazing in my day. We had the fireworks down there, the bazaar. Used to have sports down there, everything. I used to make a lot of money. I'd win first place at a lot of the different events that they had. So that was great. One of the reasons I'm running is 6 of the councilors, and Mayor Cahill's part of it, is they all voted that if we're going to build a new house or a multifamily in the city of Beverly, you have to make it 100% electric. And I totally disagree with that. If you do sideline, you have to, by law, retrofit it for solar panels or some type of electric system. And that's not how it should work. The government's getting involved in us too much. They shouldn't. Reference to disaster management, the first individuals that take care of themselves in a disaster, it's us, the citizens, and you take care of your family. If you want a gas generator, natural gas generator, gasoline generator, if you want a gas furnace, oil, you should have that right to do that. The government should be getting involved in taking your livelihood away. So, and then the extra expense that's on there. We have enough expenses. It's a big thing with the businesses in Beverly right now. Every tax that's created, that's more money that does not go into those businesses because the government takes that money. If they're using it wisely, that's one thing, but I do not see that. I see it's being wasted in different areas. So the budget's part of that also. There's going to have to be cuts made the way things are looking right now. And that's our job. You vote for us to take this position to take care of those situations. It's not your fault. So, still good to go? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you could wrap up, Rick.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we're going to stay with you, actually.
Yeah, you're going to start off.
Yeah.
Wrap it up. Yeah. Sorry.
No, actually, that transitions nicely into our next question, and we're going to start down there with you, Rick Marciano. This year's budget, the process ended with all councilors noting how next year would be tougher, and the process would need to start earlier. Every candidate talks about fiscal responsibility, but that often means making tough choices. What would you like to see from next year's budget, whether that's spending reductions, changes to programs, or strategies for other revenue generation?
Well, the priority will be public safety, public services, and civil defense. That's the first thing we have to do to take care of the citizens, make sure we're all safe and protected. Other areas, we need to look at individuals that are hired in the city, and if we really don't need them, I'm sorry, but they're going to have to move on. In certain budget, the state's given us certain monies for these positions, those may disappear, so those positions have to disappear. You know, I'd love them to be here, but in some cases, you got to do the hard right over the hard, or the hard wrong, the hard right over the hard wrong. And it's going to be tough. The schools is a big part of it. The state currently is acquiring $20.5 million from the Beverly School District, our children. Every child should be treated equal. When you take the $7.3 million that the state gives us, the $7.3 million that the state gives us, and we have over 905 students divided into it, each student should be treated equal and get $8,088 apiece. Beverly gets less than $3,500. The city of Lynn, they're getting over $17,000 per student from the state. If you go to Lawrence, the state's giving them almost $21,000. The system's completely broke. Because we have a lot of multimillionaires in this city, when they tab up our overall income, it gives us a higher medium income. So that Chapter 73 is completely broken. Treat all the students equal. That's what I want to see there. And that's going to help out with it's going to be huge with the budget. Because education is one of the big things also. Okay, thank you.
So when it comes to budget, you know, again, like I was saying before, you really have to rely on the team that's put into place. The mayor has appointed a lot of people. The mayor himself did a great update last night at City Council. It was fantastic to watch the thought that goes into everything that happens into this city. And you really have to rely on those heads of departments and the people creating that budget. And as a city councilor, you can go through it and find out where things could be adjusted. But my goal is to kind of come up with some out-of-the-box ideas where we can get some new revenue in. I have some great ideas that I think can bring in some extra money and then save residents money too. So I'm really excited to kind of like get into that, and I like the idea of getting onto things early and not waiting till later on. But I think if we work with all of our department heads, and I think if we interact as city councilors with everyone in City Hall more than they do now, I think we'll get a lot more done, and there'll be more transparency. And I think working with the mayor is extremely important, and having that open discussion all the time with the mayor and with everybody and with the constituents too, to keep everybody informed. It's extremely important. So that's my idea on the finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Currently, as a city, we send a significant portion of our budget into reserves. Speaking to residents across the city, the question has come up as to why that is. I think the council has an opportunity to employ a new budget analyst. We can have a hiring committee to see what would some other fresh eyes take a look at this situation. What would it look like if we put 13% of our budget into reserves instead of 19%, or go closer to the state recommendation, 10%? This would allow us to increase funding for our different departments. By the time the department's budget gets to the council, many of those budgets have already been slashed and they're bone thin. I know this from talking to different department directors, such as the head of the public library. In terms of increasing revenue, as a city, we need to look at, and I appreciate the irony of this, increasing our trash fee. We also provide many wonderful services to our community, looking at how could we possibly maybe offer some sort of voluntary tuition for our campus program with the rec department for a free day, give people the opportunity to pay in. We have a revenue stream source in the city. We own the the Carriage House at Lynch. We can look at how can we take more an advantage of that. Also, there is an opportunity where the city can make revenue in terms of increasing the amount of turf that we have in our city. There are dozens and dozens of clubs and teams that are competing for limited turf space here. A $2 million turf or a $3 million turf would eventually pay for itself from the rental use. I appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to address the initial point of the question, which is, timeline of budget. Yeah, it's definitely true. Folks have caught on that by the time you are at a public hearing, as a council or a school committee is about to vote, the cake is more or less baked, right? Council is very hard pressed to vote no in that situation. So making sure that folks have the opportunity to contribute, not just by going to a meeting at City Hall, but by us, again, meeting you where you are, right? We could be, at youth sports games, we could be at a farmer's market, not just to schmooze, but to say, hey, do you have 5-10 minutes to give us your thoughts on this aspect of the budget or on this project, right? Making sure that you feel like you have your arms wrapped around a given situation, including a budget, I think will allow folks to kind of buy in. When they see things pop up, they'll say, oh yeah, we talked about that. So I think that part of it is essential, that we run the budget process almost like a mini campaign. I think going into next year, where we're going to have a real challenge. It hasn't been mentioned yet, but we're projecting a deficit for the fiscal year 27 budget. That's going to be essential because we're asking you to accept one of two things, either service cuts or raise taxes. And so when you're put into that position, you ought to know in a very distilled, easy to understand, accessible way what it is you will eventually be getting out of a budget and potentially what you might be voting on if an override is pitched, right? So you need to be able to understand exactly what's coming down the pike. I think that's imperative. As far as new revenues, I'm very keen on real estate transfer fees. We'd have to work with the state to accomplish that, but we've seen these big developers come in. We've seen ownership of those developments already change hands, and we've seen them be listed as saying, hey, hike the rents. We ought to get something out of that. If we're inviting those developers into our communities, they're doing short sales and making big money. The city should see something from that. So I look forward to working with the state to accomplish that. Thank you.
Yes, welcome everyone. So I've mentioned this in a couple other forums, and I want to circle back to this point with regard to our budget. Similar to Keith's point, one of the things that I love about campaigning is you have so many opportunities to just have small conversations or large conversations. And that spirit really has to continue throughout. While we are talking about a longer time frame because we are anticipating a deficit, it is actually just best practice to spend as much time as possible on the things that tend to create confusion or division or make it hard for people to really engage. I mean, one of the things that seems small but is actually pretty big, like Councilor Flowers does right now, is in the council meetings explaining what the agenda is covering, why we are doing something in a particular procedural fashion. Those are the things that make these processes worthwhile and feel approachable. Budgets, if you're in my house, they're not always the favorite topic, but they're the thing you have to talk about. And so families have to have these difficult conversations and have figured out how to do that. But when you're in a larger, more complex environment where you're trying to consider different perspectives, you might be talking about things that are beyond the reach in terms of understanding the nuance. There needs to be ways to ask questions and to really feel like you understand what it is you're being asked to do, and that requires more time. And it also requires time away from the more formal settings where you can come and speak for 3 minutes and you sit down. Nothing wrong with that. That's what we have to do in that setting, but it's not the ideal place to understand why this and not that. So in terms of thinking about what to do with the budget, I do think there's a comprehensive approach we need to be thinking about. Certainly, wherever there's low-hanging fruit for revenue, we should pursue it. We should look at models that don't take much from families, but actually compound really well. Those small user fees or even real estate fees, but they're fees that we don't really notice on a day-to-day basis. I look at my, my coffee spending for the month, and I'm surprised at how it adds up. So we need to look at those things as well. What compounds, right? So I am at time, but definitely want to speak at that in another question.
Thank you. Well, I definitely agree with some of what my colleagues, my fellow candidates up here have said, particularly about the need to start sooner and engage in a very holistic and communicative process. It is true that as we finished FY26 in the budget process in the council chamber, we talked a lot about the challenges that would be before us in FY27. We know this from our financial forecasting, and we know it because some of our contractual obligations, fixed costs and expenses, just like in your lives, there are costs that just rise at a certain percentage. Healthcare is going to go up. Costs for providing services are going to go up. We need to be realistic about that. We know that those things are going to happen, and we need to plan for them. One of the things that I would love to see us be able to do together, and Kanan just sort of referenced this idea as well, is having some roundtable discussions, or as Kanan said, places where you can come and engage, we can come and engage together, that are not a public meeting with some of the stricter seeming rules that go with public meetings. I think those are appropriate in their space, but to bring us together to be able to have some of those conversations and to do some of the talking about what are the things we aspire to as a community. I think when we set our budgets in our own lives, we think about what our goals and aspirations are. We have those for our city too. We have them for our schools. We have them for our infrastructure. We have them for our community updates and the things that we hope to accomplish. By knowing what we aspire to, we can then lay that out and determine what are our absolute needs, and then what can we afford in this budget that's aspirational. And if not in the FY27 budget, what can we put towards the FY28 budget? I do think, and I know my time is running short, something that hasn't been mentioned that I think will be critical, and I think it's incumbent on those of us who represent you at the local level, advocating with state partners, advocating on the state level, because one of the challenges that we face in Beverly, but other local municipalities face, is the funding that comes from the state in Chapter 70 or for education. That formula is outdated. It is not providing enough support from the state, and I would love to continue to advocate with our state partners to improve that as well. Thank you.
Now to move on to a question about zoning. So zoning and housing affordability has been a regular issue in this region. Our city council has changed the building height restrictions downtown, opened up ADUs by right. Recently, our neighbors in Salem have even changed their parking restrictions for new developments. What, if any, changes would you like to see to our city zoning? We'll start again with Julie Flowers.
Thank you. I know that in Ryal Side, zoning has been a really difficult topic in some ways, because we were talking about rezoning the Bass River District right before the Hall-Whitaker Bridge was deemed unsafe by the state. And so I know that for you all in Ryal Side, I'm guessing that these conversations about zoning are not only really important, but they're conversations that, just like with the budget, we want to and need to continue to bring neighbors into, so that when we are reopening at some point in the future, and don't get nervous because while the Hall-Whitaker Bridge is not usable, we're not reopening that conversation. But when we want to talk more about what makes sense in our neighborhoods, what makes sense to be able to increase housing access and affordability, to be able to make sure that our workforce, our teachers, our firefighters, our police can afford to live in Beverly. Our young people who are graduating from college and have made a home in Beverly with their family and would like to return, that they can have a place in Beverly. And that our seniors, many of whom right now cannot afford to downsize from the homes that they have lived in and owned for many years, where can they find a home to continue to make space and home in Beverly? So we'll want to be able to talk about some of the spaces and places in Beverly that might be ripe for those kind of changes. And I think it's important for us to do that together, to have some of those community roundtables and to talk through what makes sense and how our zoning is going to affect the people who live closest to it. One change that I have talked about before that I would love to see us continue to talk about has to do with our inclusionary zoning. That has to do with how much affordable housing is within any new development. We currently do have an affordable housing trust, and if a developer building a new development decides that they would like to pay into that rather than put affordable units within the project, that is allowed. I have for several years talked about feeling like it's time for us to revisit that. And so if we want to continue that practice, we maybe can invite developers to be paying in more so that we can do more with that money, or we can think about removing that stipulation to really ensure that there are more affordable units coming all the time. Thank you.
I'm going to try to nimbly combine my last answer with this new one. So I think one of the pieces of budgeting I didn't get to speak to actually applies to this as well. I think with anything that's going to touch us so deeply, and like I said, I'm definitely with you. I drive home on McPherson every day, past all of the pigeons we've started to name over there in that area where we're wondering what's going to happen. We need to have conversation. These settings are wonderful. As you can see, sometimes we run out of time when there's a structure we're trying to follow. But if we can have settings where we can really just be honest and really talk about what's affecting us, what our dreams and hopes are, then that North Star that we're referencing will be something that we can see together as a city. And so I think something as near and dear to us as housing, access, really feeling like where we live best represents our hopes and dreams is so critical to have a conversation. And so we do have our boards and formal commissions and those types of things that have these conversations, but really knowing what you want to see, and in particular including our young people in that conversation, I think is really critical. I know that McPherson has a youth board, and there are other ways, thank you Jeremy for being here, and there are other ways that we involve our young people, but I really think we should make sure to include them in this conversation. What do they want to see? What are some third spaces that involve intergenerational engagement and community engagement that help us to then continue to make difficult decisions together? So along with that, incentivizing our developers to really think about how to have more mixed income housing and to really look at what affordable is for Beverly. What we call affordable might still be really out of reach for a lot of families, and we need to be thinking about what does a local model and formula mean for us, while we know we have the state to give us some guidelines. We know that we are in a very sought after place, which is wonderful for us, but we have to understand that for those of us who are doing that budget, affordable means different things to different people. So let's be inclusive in what that even means and ensure that those who are building homes here consider our local needs. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. This is one where knocking on 8,000 doors yields a lot of information. So just knocking in Ryal Side, one gentleman last week, Ron, I'm not sure if Ron's here, did vociferously tell me he's opposed to new development on the Bass River Overlay District, whereas a conversation I had the week before, someone was very, very pro. And so I think to Julie's point, the way you sync these folks up is by getting them into a room, making sure that it's a process where folks feel comfortable enough to share that opinion and where they know that that opinion is then baked into whatever process we take on moving forward. As far as actual hard and fast zoning rules, I did kind of commit myself a couple meetings ago to, looking at a future where parking minimums can be discussed. I think when we talk about ADUs and the things that seniors, for example, could downsize into, reducing some of those hurdles to make that more possible, such as a parking minimum, is something that we should explore as a city that is continuing to investigate a multimodal future. We've gone on these walk audits, my wife and I. We know that the city is committed to making sure that there are safer and more accessible ways of getting around the city outside of a car. And so if we can continue to look at that and make it that much easier for folks to downsize, I think that's a big win for a lot of folks who are struggling to get by today. There also needs to be that education piece. For example, a lot of folks are unaware that you can apply for community preservation funds to help develop an ADU in your own backyard. If you are committed to deeding that ADU as affordable in perpetuity. That's something we can bring to the community where it's not going to be a silver bullet of hundreds of units, but if we can get 8, 10, 12 units a year, turn into ADUs where we're using some of that community preservation money, then that's going to make a real difference for a lot of folks in this community. And so there's that education piece we have to take back to you folks on a lot of these zoning issues. So I look forward to doing that. Thank you.
So my children are fifth generation Beverly residents, and I love the possibility that we have this year and the coming years to do policy and decisions that will make sure they can afford to live here. The housing crisis that we're in is a storm that impacts everybody differently depending on where you are. I think it's important to recognize that. There are some communities in the state that are pioneering a progressive property tax, which will allow working class members of the community to afford to live and continue to live in the places that they call home. I agree with Councilor Flowers that we need to look back and revisit the ability for developers to either increase their one-time donation to the housing trust. Personally, I would like us to eliminate that loophole. I have seen firsthand my time on the planning board how single-family homes were denied being built because of that loophole. And the other thing that I would like us to consider as a city is, as a community, investing in building housing for retired people. This would make us, as a community, the landlord. It would allow retired individuals to move out of their homes, increasing the available housing stock. It will allow retired people to live with a sense of dignity. Once the retired people are moving out of the building, I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to say this, the city then returns ownership of that unit, thus becoming a landlord and creating a revenue stream. They have this in Scotland. My neighbor Darren's mother spent the last 15 years of her life in one of these types of housing units, and it gave Darren and his family a sense of relief knowing that their mom was living somewhere safe and clean, but also giving her a sense of independence that everyone deserves. My final comment is we should be working with our state partners on looking at and examining how we can bring some sort of rent control into the community to make sure that our renters are being protected. I'm out of time, sorry.
So growing up in Beverly and seeing Rantoul Street in the late 80s and the 90s, it wasn't a great place. You wouldn't want to walk down there where we had our first forum at the castle. You would never go to the press box. It wasn't a great spot to hang out. So I think that if we have reasonable development and we have reasonable discussions about the zoning and what we can do in this city, I think we can go really far. I am all for reasonable development down by the Bolomat. I think we need to do something there because it's starting to look like Rantoul did in the 90s. We need to develop, but we have to do it in the right manner. And I think that with the people in place, we can really get some incredible things done there. I think that there's a huge disconnect when it comes to affordable housing. I think there's a stigma. I think that when you think of affordable housing, that you're going to get put somewhere that you don't want to be. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that don't have an income to even come close to buying a house. It's hard to rent a house or an apartment. And I think there's a disconnect between people who can and can't. And I think that I bring that to the table, that other view that we might not all see. And I really want to help out, and I really want to be a part of that because I have friends that make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and they have no hope of buying a home in Beverly. So I think that there's got to be some way to get back to that where somebody who's a working class citizen can afford somewhere to live. Because right now, there is no answer for that question. You can ask it all day long, but we don't know how to fix that. We don't know how to make the affordable housing actually affordable for those people. So I really want to try to work with everybody in the city and try to figure out a way that we can actually make that a reality as opposed to just a talking point.
I used to live down the City Hall years ago. I'd show up to planning board meetings and all the other meetings that they had there. I was with Renee Mary, Mary Roderick, she was there quite a bit, and Rosemary Maglio. They were watchdogs, just like myself. We went down and we talked about what was going on. One of the things I did a few times when I was down there is Beverly has a zoning ordinance. And the purpose of zoning is, even the glasses are not too good, to lessen the congestion in the streets. Have you seen that? The next one is to secure safety from fires, panic, and other dangers, which that may have been changed, I believe years ago. It was a quality of life, to preserve a quality of life. To promote health and general welfare. That's the one for quality of life. To provide adequate light and air. To avoid undue concentration of population. To prevent overcrowding of land. And that's just 6 of what's on the list. There's a few more there. But I don't think we're following that. I see traffic, parking, getting worse and worse and worse. I don't see it getting any better. And what they were talking about also was affordable housing. I think it's too late right now. The government right now in a one bedroom in Beverly or Essex County, the government's paying, again, for a 1 bedroom, $2,500.42. If you rent a 2 bedroom in Beverly, the government will pay over $3,000 for a 2 bedroom. And yet, in some cases, you can't blame the landlord. If they buy a house for about $800,000, a multifamily, may have two apartments, and 7.5% interest, they're paying almost $5,000 just for the mortgage. Then they're going to have to pay insurance on that home. And that, for me this year, for a two-family, I'm paying over $2,600 just for house insurance. And then we have the property taxes.
And if you could wrap up. Yep. If you hold on to the mic, too, Rick.
Okay.
We're good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I was locked in.
All right. And with that, we'll start with you again to just give us a final message you'd like to leave Ryal Side with ahead of this election.
Well, again, this is where I was born. Beverly, Massachusetts. I went to Ryal Side. Again, that created my character, but that's another long story. I just referenced to that I was talking about earlier with the property taxes. 2004, I was paying $3,200. I'm up to $8,000 after 21 years. We're in trouble right now with what's going on. And I wish I had an answer on how to fix it. We just hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I love Ward 1. This is where part of my heart came from. Used to run down these streets. I walked to school. That was a gift in itself, just walking to school. And the friends I made, it was just it was a community. My mom lived down in Shore Ave, and my dad was right in the middle. She's right in the middle of a cul-de-sac, and they called that the circle of love. So the one thing I like about Ward 1, it's a close-knit community, and I really like to see that. Neighbors, the majority of them, neighbors know neighbors. Thank you.
I just want to thank, again, Ryal Side Civic Association and everybody for coming out. And my final thought is, I love Beverly. I am born and raised here. I left for a little while and went to California, Rhode Island, Maine. And there is no city in this country like Beverly. And I want to give back to this city so much and make it even better than it already is. And I love this place so much. It's such a gorgeous, incredible community. Ryal Side there's nothing like Ryal Side. And Todd makes this happen on a day-to-day basis, from the 4th of July parade, to everything that happens. It's just, there's nothing better. So I really want to be a part in a higher level capacity. And I'm very excited about this election. And I think that you're not going to go wrong with anybody up here. All these candidates are fantastic individuals, amazing minds that are really going to push this city forward. And if you'd like to vote for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And have an amazing night. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much. The good thing about running for an at-large race is, I think, Keith, you said it multiple times, that we're all applicants for a job. And you have 6 candidates who care very deeply about this community. Where we differ may be in how we would go about delivering and taking care of our community and our city, but this is a very fantastic group of people who really are invested. And now it's up to you, the voters, to decide which of us 3, some combination of us up here, will be having the pleasure and being fortunate enough to serve on the city council. My final comment is, if you would consider me to be one of your 3, I'm somebody who's spent most of my time in the classroom, volunteering on different services and boards and coaching. I'm somebody who likes to stick up for the little guy. I'm somebody who understands what it's like to not have a phone call returned by an official. I'm somebody who knows what it's like to stand up for their values and their beliefs. And I'm somebody who understands how important it is to give back for public service. So thank you very much. And for those of you here tonight, please try your best to bring at least 3 people to vote. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do want to thank Ryal Side Civic Association one more time, and BevCam, and yeah, my fellow candidates. What has been said by Kyle and John already is true. You cannot go wrong. So it's a great slate, and we're all fortunate to have that ability to vote for such a great three candidates part of this race. So I'm excited to be a part of it. I think, as I've mentioned, the way we've run our campaign, shoe leather, knocking doors, being present, being proactive, reminding folks my phone number, which I should have done at the beginning, 781-346-8416, making sure that you know that as one of your three, I'll be there on your behalf every step of the way, working with folks like Councilor Rotundo and our ward councilors all throughout the city to make sure that we have that redundancy in place, that you know that your phone call is being returned, your emails being returned, your crisis situation is being dealt with. I used to answer phones for the governor back when I was 19, just who you wanted to talk to, I'm sure. And what I learned back then was that, about 10% of phone calls were from yahoos, people with opinions about everything. But about 90% of the folks who were calling were completely desperate. Can't believe that they have to call the governor, would rather be calling anybody else. And sometimes that would manifest as sadness, sometimes that would manifest as frustration, sometimes that would manifest as anger. And if we have those types of situations where folks are pushed against the wall and they have no one else to call but their government officials, we have to do as good of a job representing you in those challenging situations. I have that experience over 20 years. I'm on the board of something called the International Association for Public Participation, where all we think about is how best to represent you folks in public projects, in local government, in state government. So we've got that experience, we've got that tenacity, we've got that resilience, and I look forward to putting that combination to work on your behalf. Thanks so much.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I really do want to underscore that this is really the critical part of the work, that we are engaged. It's also great sometimes to have a contest so that for those of us that are incumbents, we are sharpening our perspectives. For those of us who are trying this for the first time, we're really trying to think about what the intention is behind what we want to do. I would tell you firsthand, 10 years ago, if you told me that I'd run for public office, I would have been shocked. But I really focused more so on how do I want to serve. And I felt led in that direction. And so that helped me to overcome any concerns I had about that. And I have had such a pleasure and a deep dive into learning about all the things that people are thinking about, what's on their mind. And one thing that I really have appreciated about these times to serve in Beverly through a pandemic and afterwards is that my leadership has been on display. In fact, sometimes I'm surprised when people can tell me what I said in a meeting that was on BevCam, so thank you, BevCam. But I think what I hear oftentimes and what actually matters to me is that people can see that I'm reflecting their concerns when I'm asking questions.
Yep, time has paused, don't worry.
Okay. Excellent. I didn't want to have to break out the teacher voice. Thank you, Nate. And so I think having my leadership on display has certainly been helpful to the community. I have volunteered in numerous capacities in Beverly. The best part of all of it is not only that I get to help, but I get to make friendships along the way. I do have a catchphrase for my campaign that I actually mean very sincerely, which is connection, collaboration, and communication. That's been the undercurrent of this campaign. I have not been afraid to roll up my sleeves alongside other people campaigning to help our young people be involved. I was actually outdoor knocking with my middle schooler today. These things are all really important for the next generation and for us to show that we really do value coming to you where you are and being of service. This really is a great service opportunity, and I thank you and I ask for your vote on November 4th.
Well, I certainly will echo that thanks to the Ryal Side Civic Association, to everybody who's come out and made this forum possible. Thanks to the timekeepers. That is not an easy job, and you've been doing it really well, so thank you, keeping us on track. You know, I am not only one of your city councilors, I am a Beverly neighbor. I grew up in Beverly. I grew up in Ward 3. I now live in Ward 4, but really consider myself to really be part of this community, one of your neighbors, and eager to continue to do the work together. I have been extremely honored to serve you and to represent you and to get to work hard for you over these past almost 8 years. It's an honor to get to work with my council colleagues, particularly your Ward 1 councilor, Todd Rotundo, of course, and all of the ward councilors, but here we are in Todd's home turf, and it seems right to say thank you to Councilor Rotundo. Ryal Side, I know not everyone in the audience tonight is from Ryal Side, but I do want to say, for Ryal Siders, we recognize that this has been a particularly difficult stretch if you live in Ryal Side. A number of challenging things have all occurred at the same time, particularly the Hall Whitaker and then the Kernwood Bridge, and now you've been enduring what it is to live without a functional Hall Whitaker Bridge. Now, the good news is the temporary bridge is starting to be constructed. You may have seen work is already happening. It's not coming as quickly as any of us would like. But what I want to say to you is that my commitment, if you decide to send me back to the council to continue to serve as one of your councilors, if you live in Ryal Side, if you live in any neighborhood of Beverly, I will continue to be the counselor that I believe I have shown myself to be, which is empathetic, compassionate, accessible, and hardworking. I will continue to respond to your questions and your emails, to work collaboratively with my fellow elected officials, to get you answers, to solve problems together for you when we can, and when a problem isn't solvable in the way that we hope, to give you a clear and fair explanation as to why. I look forward to continuing to meet you, to talk with you, and I hope that you would consider giving me one of your 3 votes on November 4th. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you to all of our councilor-at-large candidates for joining us tonight. One more round of applause for all of them, please. And now we're just going to take a brief break while we reset the stage for the mayoral candidates. So in a few minutes, we'll be right back up, but please get up, talk to any of the candidates while we get set up, and we'll be back soon. Thanks.
Mama Pajama rolled out of bed and she ran to the police station. When the papa found out, he began to shout and he started the investigation. It's against the law. It was against the law. Or what the mama saw. It was against the law. The mama looked down and spit on the ground every time the name gets mentioned. Papa said, oh, if I get that boy, I'm gonna stick him in the house of detention. Well, I'm on my way. I don't know where I'm going. I'm on my way. I'm taking my time, but I don't know where. Goodbye to Rosie, the queen of Corona. See me and Julio down by the schoolyard. See me and Julio down by the schoolyard. Now when the radical preach come to get me released, we is all on the current news week, and I'm on my way. I don't know where I'm going, I'm on my way. I'm taking my time, but I don't know where. Goodbye to Rosie, the queen of Corona. See me and Julio down by the schoolyard. See me and Julio down by the schoolyard. See me and Julio down by the schoolyard.
See the curtains hanging in the window in the evening on a Friday night. Little light is shining through the window, lets me know everything's alright. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. See the paper laying on the sidewalk, a little music from the house next door. So I walk on up to the doorstep, through the screen and across the floor. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Sweet days of summer, the jasmine's in bloom. July is dressed up and playing her tune, and I come home from a hard day's work. Feel the arms that reach out to hold me in the evening when the day is through. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started in just a moment. If you can find your seats. If you came in late, there are still some seats open up front.
Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining and sticking around for our last session. So we're now welcoming our current mayor, Mike Cahill, and our current councilor-at-large, Brendan Sweeney, both here to ask for your vote for Mayor of Beverly. We're going to jump right into the questions. So once again, these were questions that were submitted by members throughout the past few weeks. And we've compiled those and also utilized our being kind of last on the list to get some refinement based on the answers from the past events as well. So please, again, see more of what the other candidates said and what these two said at the past events by going to BevCam and checking out those events at the Hastings House and with the Greater Beverly Chamber of Commerce. So jumping right into it, we'll start with Mayor Cahill. One of the big changes this time around is that the election will be our first, where we elect a mayor for a 4-year term. What is your vision for Beverly in going into 2030, and how do you see us getting there?
Thank you, Stephen and Nathan and the whole team here with Ryal Side Civic Association. Thanks to BevCam. Thanks for being in the room, everyone. You know, as you know, and I'm grateful that you've afforded me this honor, I've been your mayor for 12 years. And 12 years in, I think it's fair to acknowledge that Beverly, and I mean, we've known this a long time. So Realtor.com aside, we've all known how great Beverly is. But Beverly's become one of the most desirable communities in this country to live. And the reason is we are an open and welcoming and safe and amazing coastal setting. We deliver incredibly high quality, world-class services. We've made investments in our community in every way. And we're positioned, we're well positioned. I would say that we are in the strongest financial position this city's been in many decades. And I understand that we're all concerned about the coming budget cycle, and that's true. And the reality is that the city has built reserves during my 12 years that have put us in a position to withstand difficult times. So as we look ahead to a 4-year term, what do we really need in Beverly? What we most need in Beverly is to continue to be the community we always have been, a place that people can find, people can fall in love with, and people can choose to build a life here. And that's always been possible, one, because the people of Beverly have always been welcoming to everyone. And second, because it's been possible to find a home, to rent, to own, and that's become one of the most challenging pieces. You heard it from our colleagues running for council. We've done a lot of work collectively to improve housing opportunities. It's very much a regional challenge. Beverly's done more than a lot of other communities. It continues to be a regional challenge. We have incredible partners in the nonprofit community around housing and all kinds of social services. Oh, I'm sorry. I got a minute. Okay, sorry. So housing is a critical piece. And having had great success in implementing a master plan that the community worked on together and embraced, that's been focused around transit-oriented development in the downtown close to transportation, and needs to continue to be that, even as we need to improve the transportation regionally. There's a lot to work on there. And then the other piece is to ensure that even during a very difficult time nationally, that everyone in this community knows they're welcome. The LGBT community has been under attack, and they need to know that they have champions. I've been fighting for the rights of people in this community of all types, and everyone in the community has a right to the same rights as everyone else. We need to collectively make sure that remains the case in Beverly.
So I'd like to start by thanking you, Steve, for moderating, and to the Ryal Side Civic Association for hosting us, and to each and every one of you for taking the time to come out tonight and to learn more about the candidates. As was mentioned, my name is Brendan Sweeney. I'm an at-large city councilor, and I'm running for mayor of Beverly. And as I think about where I'd like to see the city go in the future, I first want to reflect on how many great things we have here in Beverly that make this such a desirable city, and that made it the place that my wife and I are committed to raising our family. We have a beautiful city right on the coast with so much history. We have such a unique downtown with so many local small businesses, coffee shops, restaurants. We have 2 colleges in Beverly, and then 3 in the near area, Salem State, Gordon, and of course, can't forget North Shore Community College. So there's so many assets that make Beverly such a great city. But above all, it's each and every one of you. It's the people here in this city. And I think everyone in this room should be proud of the contributions they've made, whether they're an elected official or just a volunteer, to making Beverly such a desirable community. And what I want to see for Beverly going forward is to build off of these assets and to become a city that people think is a great place to live. But also, I want city government to be an example as one of the best run cities in the Commonwealth. That's where I see us lacking right now. And going into a 4-year term, that's where I think it's important that we make a change. I've served with Mayor Cahill, as I mentioned. Each and every one of us, including Mayor Cahill, has played a role in bringing Beverly to this point as such a desirable city. But I do think there are areas where the current administration is coming short. And if I'm elected mayor, I will be responsive, I will be transparent, I will plan for the future, and I will engage directly with our union employees. And going back to the point about making Beverly the best run city in the Commonwealth, I believe I have the experience to do that. In addition to being a city councilor, which is a part-time job, in my full-time job, I work as the assistant town administrator and finance director for the town of Boxford, where I build the budget, I negotiate with unions, Previously, I worked in the Baker administration's budget office. I managed a COVID relief program, a multi-million-dollar program. I've worked on the board of directors for the Mass Municipal Association advocating for Beverly's needs. So I have the experience to both bring a fresh perspective but make the changes required to improve how our city operates and deliver results for each and everybody in Beverly. And lastly, what I see in thinking about our future is a commitment to making sure that Beverly remains a welcoming community. That's incredibly important to my wife and I. We were raised to treat everybody with dignity and respect. That's how we'll be raising our children. And so it's very important to me that Beverly continues to live out its values, especially at a time of such great uncertainty and division at the national level. And so that's what I'll be committed to as mayor. I will make sure that we build upon our unique assets as a city, that we live out our values as a welcoming community, and that we become the best run city in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Okay, and for our next question, we're going to start with Councilor Sweeney. It'll be a 3-minute response. So every candidate talks about fiscal responsibility, but it often means making tough choices. The next term will require having a first draft out very early to start that conversation and to have a budget that the council can pass by June. In the last week's events, there is disagreement about the efficiency of the size of the executive staff, while both of you also agreed that Prop 2.5 is a last resort option. So 2 questions with that in mind. With how familiar you both are with the budget, as a mayor and as a city councilor, what do you see as the most viable path to balancing the budget in terms of specific spending reductions, program eliminations, or alternate revenue streams? And when during next year's budget process do you see there needing to be a decision point on whether or not we have to present voters with a Prop 2.5 override question?
Thank you, Steve. There's a lot there, but I love talking about municipal finance, so I'll do my best not to go over a 3-minute time and trying to address it all. First, I think it's important to state that this is an area where I am uniquely qualified. Part of my job in working for the town of Boxford is serving as the town's finance director. I lead our finance team, and we have been very successful recently. The town was just awarded a AAA bond rating by S&P, which is the highest rating possible, and it's actually higher than Beverly's rating. And we received a national award for the budget document that we just released. So I can bring that experience in addressing these challenges. One other aspect of the work that I do is I'm on the board of directors for the Massachusetts Municipal Association. We just recently released a report that makes very clear the need for state government to carry their share of the burden in providing the funding for essential local services, schools, road repairs, and public safety. That's something that I've already been advocating for on Beverly's behalf, and I will continue to advocate to make sure that our state leaders are well aware of the challenges that we face locally and that they are playing their part in helping us, in partnering with us to provide these essential services. So that's a very big piece of the equation. I will be a very strong advocate at Beacon Hill for Beverly's needs. But it is important that we look internally as well while we are advocating for additional critical state aid to make sure that our financial house is in order. And I know that the mayor has mentioned in previous debates that Beverly is in strong shape financially. And there were policies that were implemented that have led to us building a strong reserve balance, which is a good thing. But what really concerns me is that the mayor's last 2 budgets utilized the entirety of our excess levy capacity, which was a gap between revenues we had raised and revenues we were able to raise under Prop 2.5. And by using that entire gap in 2 years, we've set ourselves up for a fiscal cliff in FY27, and we're looking at a $6 million deficit. The first thing that I see us needing to do is completely reevaluate how we are providing essential services to see if there are ways on both the city and the school side to provide those core services in a much more efficient manner, to leverage new technologies, and to see if there are ways by making our operations more efficient to actually try to reduce some of the headcount on the administrative positions, to be clear. I do not want to reduce any frontline staff, our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, our public works employees that are providing the core services. We need to invest in those folks. But on the back end, I do think it's questionable that the mayor has added 6 positions since he has taken office. I don't challenge the function of the positions that were added. I think it's incredibly important that we are a sustainable community and that we are working to become a more diverse workforce. But I wonder whether those functions could have been handled within our existing departments, and I think it's very important within our existing departments that we're not operating in silos, that we're looking for cross-departmental efficiencies. And if we're not taking that continual analysis of how we can become more efficient, then we're doing a disservice to the taxpayers of Beverly. So if I'm elected mayor, I'll bring that fresh set of eyes, and I will make sure that we are really scrutinizing our spending in determining what is absolutely essential to provide our core services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you repeat it, Steve?
I'll just repeat the end here. So what do you see as the most viable path to balancing the budget in terms of specific spending reductions, program eliminations, or alternative revenues, or alternative paths to revenue? And then when during next year's budget process do you see a decision point needed on whether or not to present residents with a Prop 2.5 question?
Thank you. So first, I do want to say that I do respect greatly my colleague. We've worked together for the past several years. Councilor Sweeney is not uniquely qualified to lead this city. I'm also in the race. I have been leading this city for 12 years, and we have put this city on incredibly strong footing and delivered world-class services. We also built a middle school and a police station that are the envy of all as facilities, on time and under budget. To your question directly, Stephen, we can't be afraid to talk about Proposition 2.5 and what it allows and how it challenges us. At the same time, I think there are a lot of things that we have in place that we can utilize in looking towards FY27. First, I created a grant director position when I first became mayor. That position has brought in over $90 million in funds in the time I've been in office. That has helped us to pay for positions that deliver critically important services. That's helped us to address infrastructure needs and beyond. In addition, we, as a community, as city administration, city council, our planning folks, and our community at large, we have facilitated the investment, economic investment, year in and year out, that's brought in between $1 and $2+ million in new growth each year. By that I mean, when somebody invests in the property, it creates greater value in that property. The taxes that are levied against that additional value are outside of Proposition 2.5 in the first year that they are captured. From then on, they roll into the base, and they can only go up 2.5%. What it means is that each year, that economic investment is a big part of how we're able to deliver services, given that the cost of delivering services continually rises. Another key point is that we do need more state aid. I have been working very specifically on special education funding with the governor, lieutenant governor, with legislative leadership for over a year, because I think this is the one place that every community, that every school district in the state is really struggling. And if we can get the state to identify real money, real additional money, and run it through the state special education circuit breaker formula, it can really help provide meaningful additional funds to every school in the state, because our children need what they need, and we need to do everything we possibly can to provide it. Thanks.
And for this next question, we'll start with Mayor Cahill and ask for a 2-minute response. Beverly's social services, youth services, and arts programs often serve as lifelines for vulnerable residents and key parts of our cultural identity. How will you protect or even grow these investments while keeping our budget in line?
Government cannot do it on our own. We do a lot, and we have amazing partners in this community. I don't want to name a few to miss the rest, but the reality is that on the social services front, on the housing front, on the arts front, we have a lot of wonderful partners. We have a lot of fantastic volunteers on our city boards and commissions who are doing this work as well. One project that we're almost complete with is the new Miles McPherson Youth Center. right down the street. And this is one that I'm extremely grateful to my colleagues on the city council for, because they embraced it. We've been able to take ARPA funds, and we got some help from Congressman Moulton with a congressional earmark, and we are just a few months away from opening a new home, a 4,200 square foot home that's over twice the size of the building that our youth were in for the last 50 years. And it's really going to provide both space, and we've been working with our very close partners on this program, the Greater Beverly Y, who've been partnering with the city for over 30 years to actually manage our youth center. We've been working with them, we've been funding them significantly to increase staffing and programming for our youth. And the goal is that when they get into that new building, we've got to really double down, because there's a window of opportunity. The children who need that support come from throughout the community, but they also, a lot of them can walk or bike from nearby neighborhoods. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And there's so much more. It's an everyday job. None of us have all the answers, and we all are engaged in it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with all the partners we have on housing, on arts, on youth services, on all the family and individual and senior and veterans and all of the social services that this city provides so well as a full community.
Thank you. Actually, I'm actually going to ask if you can use the other mic. I think we're having a slight issue with that one, so we'll share the known good mic for now.
All right, thank you.
But Councilor Sweeney.
So thank you for the question, Steve. To your point about these essential services, much of what city government does is provide core services that no other level of government provides. And I think it's very important that when we think about some of the financial challenges, we maintain a commitment to providing those essential services that so many families in Beverly rely upon. I think one way that we need to continue to do so is to leverage outside grant funding. That's something that the city has done a very good job of. If I'm elected mayor, I would continue to seek those outside funding opportunities, like what the police department is doing, leveraging a grant to fund a clinician to help with some of the social service angle of public safety that people don't often see, but that position is very impactful and is made possible through state grant funding. That's something that I'd want to make sure we continue if I'm elected mayor. I think community partnerships are incredibly important. We are so fortunate here in Beverly to have such a great partner in the Greater Beverly YMCA, and the executive director, Tim Flaherty, was before the city council last night to talk about the work that they're doing not only at the McPherson Youth Center, but throughout the city in providing, in partnership with the city, key programs that serve children across the city. That's something near and dear to my heart as president of Beverly's Kiwanis Club, which serves underprivileged children. That's something that I've really focused my volunteer efforts on. And so partnering with groups like the Greater Beverly YMCA to provide these services is essential. Going back to the question previously in thinking about, well, we want to make sure we continue to provide these core services even despite financial challenges. This is why it's so important that we are talking about the upcoming budget much further in advance. And in Boxford, I'm about to present the first look at the budget next week. In Beverly, we need to do something like that. We need to have much more open and transparent conversations about the upcoming budget much further in advance. And if I'm elected mayor, it would be my plan to put that first look, first draft budget before the city council and school committee at a joint meeting sometime in February or March, because it's really not acceptable to discuss these things in late May when there's only about a month before the start of the fiscal year.
Thank you. And we'll continue starting with Councilor Sweeney for the next question. On our city council, recently we've changed building height restrictions, opened up ADUs by right, and we've even seen our neighbors in Salem recently eliminate parking restrictions on new development. What, if any, changes would you like to see in city zoning? And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I think the biggest thing that we need to take action on that I see in the short term, is to formally adopt design standards. And the planning department team worked with a host of community partners and outside groups to develop draft design standards. And what this document would be is essentially supplemental to some of the more tangible restrictions outlined in our zoning ordinance that would paint a clearer picture for the type of development that Beverly, that we all want to see in various neighborhoods. It would make certain aesthetic standards codified. There would be more dimensional requirements. There would be green space requirements, things that I think would add some level of uniformity and also allow for, as best we can, new development to come into line with what residents generally expect for the character of any given neighborhood in Beverly. I think it's very important both for residents to have an understanding and input in this document before it's formally adopted by the City Council, but if adopted, it would also then paint a clearer picture for developers in any given neighborhood about the type of growth that Beverly residents and Beverly leaders are looking for. And it's been 3 years since that draft document was first published for any sort of review by the public. I think that's far too long, and it really should have already been before the council and adopted. So if I'm elected mayor, I want to make sure that we're bringing that community voice back in. We're still getting, a review before it's being put before the council, but that's a top priority of mine if I'm elected mayor, to make sure that that's before the council for review and for adoption. Otherwise, I see opportunities for small-scale, targeted development of smaller multifamily units. I think currently in our housing market, we have a whole host of apartments that have been built on Rantoul Street. We've been very strategic as a city in adding affordable units, deed-restricted affordable units, which I think serve a very important segment of the housing market, and we have a handful of single-family homes. What's really missing, and it's called the missing middle for a reason, are those smaller multifamily units. And when I think about the challenges that my wife and I face, like many other young families, in saving up enough to be able to break into Beverly's housing market, I believe that more availability for those type of units would really help both provide a key missing segment of the housing market and allow people who have moved away out of college to maybe return to Beverly, would allow seniors the opportunity to downsize within Beverly and free up some single-family homes. And I think it would really help overall with some of the affordability challenges that we're facing. So those are two tangible actions that I will take if elected mayor. I will put the design standards before the City Council, and I will seek to foster the development of smaller multifamily units. Thank you.
Repeat it if you don't mind.
Yep. So our City Council has changed building height restrictions downtown, opened up ADUs by right, and our neighbors in Salem have recently eliminated parking restrictions on new development. What, if any, changes would you like to see in zoning?
Thank you. So, agreed on the design standards. I think they're just about ready to be brought forward. And I know a lot of fantastic work's gone on in our planning department. We had a very talented group of residents who came together in a working group as part of the grant that the grant director and planning department secured. So that's just about ready to bring forward. We have done a lot of incredible work around affordable housing, and since we both gave some love to the Y, we have to say that Harbor Light Homes is one of our most valued partners in this community. And we together, yes, and we together have, we've facilitated, and you've built a family neighborhood just uphill from the high school, a senior neighborhood in the old Briscoe High School, Middle School. And working with the YMCA, you built, you turned SROs into studio apartments, and you added about 20 additional ones at the old Cabot Street Y that are incredible homes, forever affordable homes for people in our community. We need more of that in every way. We need better infrastructure to support more housing in Beverly. I have been part of the state's effort to look at the future of the commuter rail several years ago, and the recommendations that we brought forward were to fully electrify and fully rebuild all the stations in the 400-plus mile commuter rail system, because that's what Greater Boston needs to be economically competitive into the next century, and that's what the region and our community need to be able to support the housing that's needed to support the jobs that will be here, that are here and that will be here. That infrastructure is coming. The Healy Driscoll administration are committed to it. They're electrifying the Fairmont line out of South Station now. The Newburyport-Rockport line is next on the list, and my hope is we'll see that electrification and rebuild with additional stations as well between here and Boston in the coming years. Another thing we need is the lack of homes for seniors who are ready, getting ready or ready to sell the houses they raised their families in, but there aren't options in Beverly, aren't sufficient options, and that may lead to zoning. There's not a lot of undeveloped land in this community. Most of what's undeveloped we're trying to protect as open space, but there are some potential sites for the type of a community for seniors where you can move in fully independent, and there may be some opportunities on a campus for needs as you age. We need to make that happen within Beverly. That will open up homes for first-time home buyers to then come into. So it's not the whole solution, but it's a piece of what we need.
Expanding on zoning, we also got a number of questions specifically about River Street. So when the bridge is complete, what, if anything, would you like to see done with the Bass River overlay? We'll start with Mayor Cahill for 2 minutes.
Well, the whole idea of a Bass River overlay so that there could be housing built around the train station has been part of both of the last two city master plans. And the master plans are written by the community. And the process to write the last plan in 2018 and 19 was incredibly robust with lots of wonderful input by the community. Now, when the state told us on a Friday that they were forever closing the Hall Whitaker the next day, I said publicly very quickly, we are going to shelve the conversation about the Bass River overlay as long as there's no bridge to drive over. We just can't take steps as city government to put more pressure on our surface roads by facilitating new housing in that sense. So, that's really a timetable within which we should bring it back and revisit the whole conversation. And it should be as open and robust, and it should be the same type of process because people really dug in on that. There's an opportunity, and in the long term, a high and best use of space next to a critical transit station, one of the busiest train stations in Massachusetts. Eventually, there will be more housing there. Not right away. Eventually, there'll be 15-minute frequency trains all day long coming in and out of Boston, with the time to get to North Station cut from what it is today at 36 minutes from the depot down to somewhere in the 20s. So there'll be a much more robust system. And then the other connections that need to be made, bus, bike, pedestrian, to make the whole of our downtown and connectivity to other communities nearby really evolve to what we need over this next century. That all will help to tell the story of when and in what way that Bass River waterfront is best redeveloped.
What I think is crucially important to start with is in envisioning any change at the Bass River, there needs to be a very transparent and open process that allows for meaningful resident feedback before any member of city government, the mayor, city councilors, or otherwise, really begins to think about what tweaks to the zoning ordinance in place or an implementation of an overlay district, whatever the next step for that area might be. We need to make sure that it's a very thoughtful process and that we are very cognizant of the impact that redevelopment in that area would have either on neighbors downtown or on neighbors here in Ryal Side. And so I think it was the right move to pause a process from moving forward that residents already had concerns about their lack of feedback or the lack of opportunity to provide meaningful feedback. I think the closure of the bridge gave the city the opportunity to reset, as incredibly unfortunate as it was, as everybody in this neighborhood knows, before thinking about what potentially could go in the Bass River area. And so what I'd like to do in incorporating some of that resident feedback is to first make clear my commitment to leverage the ability that state law gives us in redeveloping an area on the waterfront to preserve access to that waterfront and take that opportunity to provide increased open space and recreational opportunities immediately on the waterfront that are currently not available right now. I think that could be a real benefit to any redevelopment of the Bass River. And so it's very important to me that that conversation is had early so that residents know that opportunity will be available. Then I think it's a matter of looking at where do we go in terms of height restrictions and what type of development would be targeted, whether it's a mixed-use development similar to the standards downtown, though I wouldn't expect the height limits to be the same. I'd expect a smaller scale, maybe a 4-story max district to be something that's a little more palatable. But exploring those opportunities, whether it's mixed use, whether it's housing, and really looking at what potential we have to increase access to the waterfront, those are things that are important to me. And really what's most important is getting that resident feedback. So those are the things I'll be looking at if this conversation moves forward.
Thank you. Sticking with Councilor Sweeney to start this one, looking forward on our Beverly Public Schools, what is your long-term plan to strengthen Beverly Public Schools, retain quality teachers, and improve outcomes for all students?
So to start, I think it's very important to say that we have a great public school system here in Beverly. So we've got a great foundation to build off of. What I think is really important for the next mayor is to be actively engaged with the folks on the ground, our teachers and paraprofessionals. And I've made clear that if I'm elected mayor, that is how I will be approaching the job. I will be at the bargaining table with our teachers and paraprofessionals. I know that Mayor Cahill was not at the bargaining table until after the strike started, and I think that really hurt the ability to keep open lines of communication between the administration and the folks on the ground, the teachers and paras. So that's one commitment that I have already made in my discussions with teachers and paraprofessionals. I think it's also very important that city leadership and the school administration are creating opportunities for collaborative problem solving. We cannot move forward as a district in addressing challenges that we have at the middle school, given the size of the school, challenges that we have faced in our in-district special education programming, and whether or not we actually have the capacity to service every student's IEP. I think it's very important that as we are determining the best way to address those issues, that solutions are being developed in a collaborative manner. Once we have essentially created the environment where everybody is swimming in the same direction, so to speak, then I believe it will be very important to determine how can we provide core services to students, and I believe public education is the most important thing that we do as a city government. How can we provide those services to students in an efficient manner so that our students are being given the opportunity for a quality education, but that we are providing those opportunities within our financial means? I think that's where the challenges are really going to be. That's where we're going to be confronting challenges as a city. And so early on, I want to make sure to take those initial steps to build the relationships required to really be effective in partnering with the Beverly Public Schools. Then I want to make sure that we've identified areas that we might be lacking in terms of the services we're providing. I think bringing an outside party in to help with that assessment is a good way to get a fresh set of eyes on some of the challenges we're facing. And then it's a matter of collectively as a community determining what that next step is, whether we need to adjust fees within the school or whether we need to look at a more holistic approach toward bringing in new revenues. And again, I've mentioned this in debates. I truly believe a Proposition 2.5 override should be an absolute last resort when other measures have already been taken. That's how I plan to approach the job. But I think having those conversations with everybody on the same page, clear and open lines of communication, and making sure that we are rebuilding trust is very important, and that's how I'll be approaching working with the Beverly Public Schools if I'm fortunate enough to be Beverly's next mayor.
So last year was a horrible experience. Nobody wanted it. We worked incredibly hard to prevent it, and it happened. I will say this. I made mistakes. Everyone made mistakes. One mistake I did not make is that I have my whole life, and in every step and every moment as your mayor, in my heart and in my words and in my deeds, respected our educators every step of the way. Now, my mom and dad moved to Beverly a little bit before I was born. They were 100% committed to public education. My 5 brothers and I went through the Beverly Public Schools. My mother, after my dad passed too young, worked as a French and Spanish teacher in every school in Beverly for over 20 years to raise her sons and to get them the public education that my parents believed in. I taught in the Beverly Public Schools. I coached in the Beverly Public Schools for years. As your mayor, I've done everything I can to make resources available to our Beverly Public Schools. I feel it to the bottom of my heart. It is in every fiber of my being to try to make the Beverly Public Schools truly great in every classroom every day of the year. It is my number one goal in this job. I was criticized last year that we didn't tap reserves. In 2004, when the first recession hit earlier this century, Beverly had no reserves and closed the Memorial Middle School. In 2008 and 2009, when the Great Recession hit, Beverly had no reserves and closed the McEwen Elementary School. The reserves are here so that when the bad time comes, we can continue to deliver high-quality services, public safety, education, and everything else, not without some challenges, but we can do those through bad times. So there's a lot, 1 minute, thanks. There's a lot to do moving forward. I have lifelong friends who are educators in the Beverly Public Schools and longtime friends. I've had ongoing conversations with them and with others, and I've had very healthy and productive conversations with and relationships with leadership in the Beverly Teachers Association. I think leadership now in Beverly is about helping to restore and rebuild and move forward. What I understand of education, of public education in this city and in this state, what I understand of our community, of our educators, of our families, I'm the right person, I believe, and I hope you agree with me, to help us move forward. This is the single most important school year in our city's history, and the one that follows will be the next most important. And I'm committed, again, to every fiber of my being to get this right and make sure our schools do move forward as the great place that I know they are, and all the wonderful education that goes on every day continues and only improves. Thanks.
So, in an era when many communities are divided on social issues, how will you, as mayor, lead Beverly in fostering unity and inclusion for all, including LGBTQ+ residents, people of color, immigrants, and other underrepresented groups? What are some actionable steps that you can take? We'll start with Mayor Cahill with 3 minutes.
Thank you, Steve. When I first became mayor, I participated with former Councilor Rand and other councilors to create the Beverly Human Rights Committee. A very important step, and an organization, a group that has done wonderful work in our community to help us move forward and address marginalized neighbors, friends in our community. When George Floyd was murdered in 2020, we were just about to put our budget proposal forward, and I approached my colleagues on the council, and we agreed to set aside money to address a racial equity, racial justice initiative. We didn't know what it would look like, but we immediately went out to the community, and we had several community meetings over the course of that summer, the COVID summer, to try to figure out how to move forward. We landed on conducting a race equity audit of city government operations and activities. Incredibly valuable process that led to us creating the position of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Director, an employee in my office, and led us to start to implement recommendations from the audit. Things like language access, language being a barrier to people getting the services that everyone has a right to in the community. Digital access, which cuts across all demographics in the community. The reality that some of our neighbors from other countries, particularly first-generation immigrants, came from countries where government was not to be trusted and government was to be feared, so they weren't going to put their hands up and come for support. So a lot of things that we recognize we need to work on, and we're working every day on these things. I will say that as your state representative, and you gave me the honor of representing this community in the state legislature for 10 years, I was there when it was time to fight for the rights of our LGBTQ friends, family members, neighbors. I fought and prevented the legislature from putting a question on the ballot to define marriage as between one man and one woman. And I fought to ensure that full marriage rights were there for our LGBT community. I'm going to say that today, given the dynamic at the national level, if you are LGBTQ in Beverly or love someone who is, if you are an immigrant in Beverly or love someone who is, if you are a person of color in Beverly or love someone who is, you are fearful for yourself and your loved ones. It's critical that your mayor and your local government are champions. Champions. Don't just say that we'll abide by certain things, but we'll lock arms and stand and fight with and fight for the rights. Because as I said earlier, everyone has the right to the same rights as everyone else. Thanks.
So first off, what I think is incredibly important is that we as city leaders live out our commitment to making Beverly a welcoming community, both in word and in action. And as I mentioned, I was raised to treat every single person with dignity and respect. And I think it's incredibly important that we all, both as city leaders and just as members of the community, are uplifting our neighbors and making sure that we are treating them with dignity and respect, and that we recognize that folks from a whole host of different backgrounds come to Beverly because they want to make a life for themselves and their family, that they care about this city, and that they want to give back to the city. And we need to recognize that whatever the background that somebody may come from, that they are a valued member of our community here in Beverly. And so as mayor, that is the approach that I will take. I want to discuss more specifically both the immigrant and LGBTQ community. I see what's going on at the national level, the uncertainty and the division, and I think it's really important that we as local leaders outline the tangible actions that we plan to take in order to keep members of both communities safe. For the immigrant community, I think it's very important to follow the guidelines that Attorney General Andrea Campbell issued when it comes to the schools. It's very important that it's made clear to everybody in Beverly that any Beverly student, regardless of their immigration status, will have the right to a high-quality, free public education. That's a bedrock of our state here, where public education was founded. And if I'm elected mayor, I will make sure that ICE is not able to interact directly with Beverly students without first gaining parental consent or a valid judicial warrant. Our schools will be safe places for every child in Beverly, regardless of your immigration status. I am committed to that if I'm elected mayor. With regards to members of our LGBTQ community, I think it's first very important for me to state clearly that I value your contributions to Beverly. I think it's very important that every city leader recognizes that and makes clear the commitment, and this is the commitment that I'm making, to keep Beverly as a safe, inclusive, and welcoming community for all, including members of our LGBTQ community. And so what that means if I'm elected mayor is that I will direct our city departments to operate with a commitment to equity and non-discrimination. I will make sure that we are strengthening our city and school anti-discrimination policies with regards to gender and sexual orientation. I will make sure that all of our city services are accessible to everybody in Beverly, including members of the LGBTQ community. And I am committed to partnering with our public schools to combat bullying, to make sure that no child in the Beverly public school system feels unsafe, that they have the ability to learn in a safe environment, and that they are fully welcomed in our city. Thank you.
How will you instruct Beverly Police to either engage or not engage with ICE? Do you intend to restrict ICE from using city resources? We'll start with Councilor Sweeney with 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I addressed this a little bit in my most recent answer about my commitment to making sure that every child in Beverly regardless of immigration status, has the ability to a high-quality public education, and that their parents don't have to worry about what's going to happen to them after they drop them off at school. So that, first and foremost, is the commitment that I'm making to this city tonight, that if I'm elected mayor, I will make sure that our schools remain a safe zone and that the threshold of parental notification, of a judicial warrant, that those are crossed before any sort of ICE activity takes place involving any child in Beverly. That's very important to me. I also think that that protection needs to be extended into our private spaces, and we need to make sure that we, as local government, are committed to making sure that ICE isn't entering a private space without a warrant or consent from property owner. And I think that's very important when I think about our places of worship and our nonprofit service providers. And so I want to make sure that our local police recognize that commitment in terms of how they protect residents of Beverly. I also think that it is very important to remember that in Massachusetts, per a Supreme Judicial Court decision, our local police cannot enforce federal civil immigration law. And that's obviously a commitment as mayor that I would make sure we uphold and that we follow the law as decided by the Supreme Judicial Court here in Massachusetts. I also want to make clear that I will be working with the Beverly Police to ensure that they are following all anti-discrimination laws with regards to immigration status, race, ethnicity, or nation of origin. So those are all tangible actions that I will be taking, whether it's partnering with the Beverly Public Schools or partnering with the Beverly Police, to make sure that we are committed to keeping members of our immigrant community safe here. And I think it's important that we also recognize and state that we value members of our immigrant community. This is a nation that was built on immigrants. You can go back far enough on either my mom or my dad's side. I'm descended from immigrants, as is probably everybody in this room. And so it's very important that not only are we stating at a high level our commitment, but that we are following out these tangible steps, as I have committed to doing if I'm elected mayor.
That was a great answer. Those are good points. I completely agree. I will say that our schools very quickly trained, and they have since retrained when the administration took office back in January and these actions started happening. And everybody understands that the schools do not need to and are not obligated to allow access or entry to any ICE agent. Unless there's one very specific instance, and that's if they're holding and producing a judicially signed criminal warrant. Other than that, there is no obligation to let them into schools. So it's a value that we have, that we share. We will do anything we can to keep our children safe while they're learning. We'd like to keep them safe all the time. And yet ICE is a federal agency with authority. Our police also trained initially, and they understand that they do not cooperate with ICE. They do not work with ICE. They cannot stand in the way of ICE. So, there are limits. There are limits. And this is part of the trouble. This is part of why people are afraid and why it's difficult. But certainly 100% our police department will not, has not, is not, and will not be doing anything to cooperate or help ICE. It's simply that they need to stand aside in certain instances.
And coming to a close, only running a little bit over tonight, so thanks everyone for staying so long. We'll start with Mayor Cahill. What final message would you like to leave Ryal-Siders with ahead of the election? Would you give us a response in 2 minutes, please?
Well, sorry. We've talked a bit about Beverly's current status. Look, the reality is that I don't do anything on my own. Everything that I might say I to, they're really we's, right? A lot of people make good things happen in this community. I've been at the helm. We have built reserves to a level that is consistent with what the Department of Revenue and others recommend. We have utilized cash reserves along the way to make significant improvements in our community, such as we built a new floor at the North Beverly Fire Station because it could not support the trucks. We bought a new computer-aided dispatch system for our 911 center. These are with cash reserves. We bought the city's first fire ladder truck in a generation. And when it comes to what we've used operating budget money for, we've increased staffing in the fire department by 8 positions, which has allowed us to staff 4 trucks on the street every day when for decades it had been only 3. We've increased staffing in the police department significantly. We've tripled the budget for police training. One of my high priorities with our police is that they train as much as possible in a very kind of tactical way. For example, they did a significant training about how to work with and de-escalate people on the spectrum who might get into a hard situation and get scared and not know how to respond. It's important that our police and our community are safe in all of our interactions. Those are just a couple of examples of ways in which we've strengthened services throughout the community. Yes, we are going to face challenging times. I think everybody's expecting that budgetarily. We're in a very strong position. We have an incredibly talented team that I get to work with day in and day out at City Hall. We have great partners on the City Council, and we have a community that is engaged in all good ways with us. And I humbly ask for your vote to continue this work and to lead our city into the future, particularly for the first 4-year mayoral term in city history. Thank you.
So thank you again for everybody for taking the time to come out tonight. And in addition to my passion for local government, which I believe is the most effective level of government in improving the lives of your neighbors, your friends, and your family, I'm running for 3 main reasons. The first is that I have the experience to do the job, which we've talked a little bit about tonight from my work as the Assistant Town Administrator and Finance Director in Boxford, where I build the budget and I negotiate with unions. I worked in the Baker administration managing a $500 million COVID relief program. I've worked at the state level through the Mass Municipal Association, and I've worked locally as a volunteer, a planning board member. I chaired the Cable TV Advisory Committee, and I'm president of the Kiwanis Club. So I have the experience to be effective on day one at a time that I think we need a change. And if I'm elected mayor, I will be responsive. I will answer your calls and emails, and I will make sure that City Hall is accessible so that you can have the services that you need and that you can get the answers that you need for what city government is doing to help your life. I will plan ahead for the future. I'll implement a 5-year capital plan, which we don't have right now, and which has really led to challenges when trying to figure out how to tackle the infrastructure needs we have in this city, both in terms of our buildings, but our roads and sidewalks. I will put my financial acumen to use in balancing our budget so that we can put Beverly on strong financial footing for the future. And I will negotiate directly with our police officers, our teachers, and our firefighters to make sure that they have fair contracts and they know that the city administration supports their important work on the front line. Lastly, the third reason I'm running is that my wife and I are invested here. This is where we're raising our family, and I want to make sure that it remains a welcoming community for all and a place that anybody can come and make a home for themselves. So I humbly ask for your vote on November 4th, and if elected, I will be action-oriented, accessible, and accountable to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes our candidate forum. Thank you to our candidates for their time and thoughtful responses. And once again, thank you to BevCam, and thanks to Kim for stepping up and showing up tonight. Thank you to Connor and Luigi for coming in early and setting up for us. We want to remind you of 2 key dates coming up. November 4th, we hope to see you all back here to vote, and more importantly, support the Ayers PTO Bake Sale. After that, we hope that you can continue your civic engagement and join us at our next general meeting at the Ryal Side Civic Association building at 7 Eleanor Ave, November 10th at 7 p.m. Thank you again, and good night, everyone.
Good question, Steve.